I love Magic, I love Civ 6, I am Loki the Gamer, and these are my Civ 6 themed Magic fan cards. Let's take a look at Australia today. So Australia has, like all the other Civs in my project, 6 cards in my little bundle. 1 legendary land of Australia, 1 leader, 2 unique items, 1 agenda, so 1 card inspired by the agenda of the leader, and then I had to be creative once again for 1 last bonus card. Let's jump right into what Australia does. An overview of Australia. Australia in Civ 6 cares a lot about land improvements, so building a lot of pastures, a lot of outback stations, which is its unique improvement. So lots of land improvements, lots of production, and a very high appeal. Let's take a look at my table of equivalents that I've designed. So, land improvements, you'll see I almost always associate that with land auras in magic terms. So sure enough, you will see a lot of cards and effects that deal with land auras. Now production, I've always associated with ramping, so you can expect Australia to be very good at ramping. So lots of mana to play very, very quickly. And finally, appeal. Well, according to the table, what is that? Nothing. That's right. I could not find anything in Magic that could make sense, essentially, to translate appeal into. So, drum rolls please, I made up my own. I made up my own concept. The concept of appeal is something I made up. I'm very excited about that. I can't wait to share that with you. Of course, only a few Civ, 2 or 3 off the top of my head, actually do care about appeal. So Australia is one of them, and do pay attention to all of my other videos to find out about the few others. Australia's color identity, well, it's practically all colors. The land of Australia is so varied. Australia cares deeply about coastline, so it's gotta be blue. There's also a lot of rocky terrain, some very famous rock formations, so therefore mountains, not to mention the passion of the Australian people. And there's also some greenery, so green, the sense of growth, despite the presence of a lot of desert. Desert is also a lot like plains, so white, and white is really the central color of Australia, dedication to peace. So they have all colors, but because they love peace so much, they lack black. They have all colors except black. I didn't feel that the warlike, selfish nature of black suited John Curtin and his dedication to fighting the hawks of war, or whatever he says. So let's take a look at Australia in Civ 6. So the power of Australia itself is called a land down under. So there are 3 major things in here: +3 housing in coastal cities, and then pastures trigger a culture bomb. That means when you build a pasture, vroom, all of the land around the pasture automatically gets absorbed in the borders of that city. So basically extra land. So remember that pasture equals free land. And finally, all of your districts, nearly all of your districts produce extra stuff, bonus nearly everything when they're built on tiles with charming or breathtaking appeal. So there you go, there's the concept of appeal. Australia really cares about appeal. And let's take a look at the legendary land that I made to encompass all 3 of those abilities. So it is a mythic rare Australia, a desert. I gave it the desert subtype, Australia having quite a lot of that. And it enters tapped. You'll see it's a mighty powerful card, a little too powerful for a land. I'm sure you'll agree. So the least I could do is making it enter tapped. It produces a blue. So that is a little reference to the first part of that ability, bonus housing in coastal tiles. So there you go. So that's the only little nod I made to that power. The land gives you blue and nothing else. So it belongs in a blue deck, or a deck that has at least blue in its identity. Then the second part of the ability, culture bombs. So extra land when you build a pasture. Well, a pasture is a land improvement. So whenever an aura enters under your control attached to a land, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So a free land drop when you cast a land aura. And yes, there are plenty of land auras in my set of cards. Yeah, so again, mighty powerful. Not something that blue typically is known for, but yeah, it seems to make sense. The more auras you get on your land, the more new lands you'll be able to drop for free. And finally, the big one, as if all that hadn't been enough, the ability to which I gave the name Land Down Under. So for 1 mana and tap this land, spells you cast this turn cost X less to cast, where X is your appeal, and there's the concept of appeal that I created. And so since I created it, well, of course, I supplied a little reminder text to help explain the keyword, the concept of appeal. Let's take a look. A player's appeal is 0 plus 1 for each mountain and each forest they control, minus 1 for each swamp they control. So there you go. It is in your best interest, if you play with that land, if you play with any of my cards that care about appeal, it's in your best interest not to play black, not to have a whole bunch of swamps. And it is your best interest to have a lot of mountains and a lot of forest. It doesn't care about plains or islands, doesn't increase or decrease your appeal one way or the other, but it really cares about forests and mountains. And of course, if you know Civ 6, that is exactly what jacks up your appeal. What increases your appeal is mountains and forests. And so there you go. So let's do the math. If your appeal is, let's say, just one, so that means that when you activate this ability, spells you cast this turn will cost 1 less to cast. All of your spells. But of course, to activate that, you had to tap Australia itself, and you had to feed 1 mana into that ability. So really, it cost you 2. It cost you 2 mana to get a discount that will last until the end of the turn. So if you cast 1 spell, you're running a deficit here. If you cast 2 spells, you're just breaking even. If you cast 3 spells, then you are actually netting a profit. So if you intend on casting a lot of cheap spells, then that ability makes sense. But of course, if they're cheap, maybe you don't even need discounts. I don't know. But of course, that is if your appeal is 1, essentially the minimum. If you can make your appeal grow scaringly bigger, then that ability could become extremely good. If your appeal is 3, 4, 5, dare I say 6, then yes, for only 2 mana, by tapping Australia and providing 1 mana, you get a massive discount to all your spells, a 4, a 5 mana discount to all your spells until the end of the turn. That can be massive. So that represents the production bonus of Australia, all of those bonuses that Australia gets to all of its district when it has a whole lot of appeal. And now, the really fun part, if you do want to use Australia in an Australian deck, well, here's a surprise. John Curtin, there he is, John Curtin, Prime Minister, a rare 1/1 human advisor for only 3 mana, but look at that, he is 4-colored, blue, white, and then a hybrid of green and red. So there's the catch. If you want to build John Curtin as a deck, and you want to use the Australia land in your deck, then you will want, of course, a lot of forests and mountains. But if you want to be able to cast John Curtin, you need all 4 colors. So how do you get about that? How do you make sure that you have enough plains and islands, enough white and blue to cast John Curtin and cast all of the other spells that you care about, but also enough mountains and forests to actually get a good enough appeal? That's an interesting balancing act. You'll need to focus on dual land that actually have basic land types in order to have forest and mountains and still have a lot of white and blue at the same time. So that's a very interesting balancing act. Or you could just not care about using Australia, the land, in your deck. I just think it's a lot of fun if you actually do find a way to include it. Well, let's take a look at the abilities of John Curtin in Civ 6. His ability is called Citadel of Civilization. In a nutshell, whenever he gets attacked, he gets a massive production bonus. And that is why the card itself does exactly that. Whenever a creature deals combat to you, put a +1/+1 counter on John Curtin. So there you go, your commander grows big and fat each time you get attacked. And then to turn that into production, don't forget production is ramping, he has this other ability, remove a +1/+1 counter from John Curtin to add 1 mana of any color. So there you go, mighty useful. He has a 4-color deck. He needs the not only ramping, but he needs mana fixing. So not only this helps you ramp, it helps you mana fix. So very good, very useful, and it represents that ability. The more you attack me, the more you make my commander stronger, and the more you enable me to ramp and cast a lot of spells. So he can be a pretty tough thing to handle. So if your opponents have swarms of tiny little weenie creatures, they'll think twice about attacking you. You're just they are just jacking up your commander in your ramping abilities. Now on to the unique builds. First, the unique unit of Australia is the Digger. The Digger in Civ 6 is it replaces the infantry. So it's a simple 5/5 common card that costs 6 blue, white, and 4 generic. Human soldier. It's very simply a 5/5 trample. However, that's what it would be if it were a simple infantryman. But in Civ 6, the Digger's special ability is a bonus that scales up with coastal lands. So when they fight near coastal land, they get fighting bonuses. And I translated that into an ability that gives the Digger +1/+0 when blocking, +1/+0 for each island you control. So when you get attacked, if it blocks, it gets bonuses for your islands. When it attacks, this creature gets +1/+0 for each island defending player controls. So it's the good old Gaia's Liege concept. It rewards you for having islands when defending. It rewards you when your opponent has islands when attacking. But unlike Gaia's Liege, it doesn't depend on it. It's still a 5/5 trample no matter what. So there you go, there's the Digger. A very simple card, that's why it's a common, and it's mighty expensive. So I think it's fairly balanced. And now on to the unique improvement, it is the Outback Station. So yes, because the legendary land of Australia rewards you for dropping land auras. Well, this one, of course, is a land aura, and it rewards you for having other land auras. The Outback Station in Civ 6 is an improvement that thrives when it is next to other Outback Stations and other pastures. So again, it rewards you for having many similar improvements on your land. In Civ 6, it must be built. It must nearly always be built on flat land, and as a nod to that, I made it an enchant non-mountain land. So there you go. Must not be a mountain. And what it does is, enchanted land has tap, create 1 food token for each enchanted land you control. The Outback Station does indeed give you a whole lot of bonus foods. The more you have Outback Stations and pastures around it in Civ 6. So in Magic, it does the same thing. So food, if we go to my equivalency table, I made food translate to, at least in this case, into, well, food tokens. Sometimes I've used other things, but in this case, I made food equal food, literally. So there you go, the Outback Station, an uncommon that drops for 2, 1 white, and then a hybrid of a white or green. And now for the agenda card. What makes John Curtin happy or upset when you face him in the game? His agenda in Civ 6 is called Perpetually on Guard. And basically, he is very angry when other players conquer cities. So he doesn't like conquerors. He likes everyone to own their own cities and land. And, well, that was surprisingly easy to translate into a magic card. It is an enchantment, a common enchantment for a blue and a white. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Perpetually on Guard deals 3 damage to that player for each permanent they control but don't own. So it punishes thieves. So if you have stolen permanents via a number of ways, especially blue ones, then this enchantment penalizes you. So you can have that defensively if you know that you are facing meanies that tend to steal your stuff. But there's more than that. If you yourself play a deck where you give stuff away, like Zedru, for example, and this spell happens to be exactly in Zedru's colors. So this would be perfect. I have a Zedru deck. I would love for this to exist. I would stick that in my Zedru deck any time of the day. So there you go. I give presents to you. And now during your upkeep, oh, look at that. You owned this. No, I mean, you don't... no, you control this, and yet you don't own it. I gave it to you. 3 damage to you, good sir or madam. So there you go. That would be nasty. So it's a good defensive card, but it's also nasty if you play something like Zedru. And hey, why not? Because it's called Perpetually on Guard. I decided that this enchantment would also grant all your creatures vigilance. Seems thematically relevant. And now let's move on to the final card. I had to be creative for that. And I decided that if you play Australia, at least in Civ 6, if you play Australia in Civ 6, you are likely to care very deeply about appeal. So you're going to, from the very beginning of the game, you're going to do whatever you can to increase the appeal of your land. So by the middle/end of the game, you're going to have all this appeal. You might want to use it to build, neighborhoods, sure, but also, what are they called? Seaside resorts, and especially the almighty national park. And if you build those, it's because you have a culture victory in mind. So there you go. My final card for the Australia pack is an Outback National Park. So I encompass the concept of the national park into a magic card, and I gave it to Australia because Australia cares so deeply about appeal. So it is once again a land aura. It costs a mighty 6 blue-green plus 4 generic, but because the national park is supposed to care about appeal, I work that into the cost of the spell. If you read in the box, it says the spell costs X less to cast, where X is your appeal, once again, and then the definition of what appeal is, same as before. So there you go, this spell could cost you as little as just a blue and a green. Mighty fine. And what does it do? Well, what do national parks do in Civ 6? They grant you tourism, which eventually win you the game culturally. And if we look at my equivalency chart, we notice that very often culture equals tap. So the concept behind that is the opponent's creatures, they're much too busy admiring you and visiting you to attack you, and that's why they are tapped. So it's a pacifying effect. So yeah, your culture is so impressive that your opponent's creatures are tapped half the time because they love you so much. And that is what the Outback National Park does. If we read the last line, Enchanted Land has tap to tap up to 2 target creatures. So there you go, it pacifies 2 creatures. Now, tapping creatures is not something that green typically does, so it's a little bit outside of the color pie chart for green, but it is perfectly in keeping with blue's nature, so it's a perfect blue card, tapping creatures. And there you go, there's my Australia mini pack of 6 cards. What would you do with that? Would you play John Curtin as a commander? Of course, if you did play him, would you stick a whole bunch of land auras in your deck to maximize the abilities of the land of Australia and the Outback Station? So would you make it a land aura tribal deck, essentially? But you don't have to, I suppose. John Curtin himself doesn't care about what's in his deck. He just ramps amazingly well. Maybe you want ways of preventing damage because you want to get attacked all the time in order to beef up your commander. Maybe you want to force your opponents to attack you. Maybe you want some goading in there, something to force your opponents to attack you, and then in order to survive, maybe some damage prevention. Because you want to get attacked, you just don't want to die, and because you get attacked, you get a mighty beefy John Curtin who can then help you ramp like mad, empty your hand. And like I said, what you put on the battlefield could be land auras, it doesn't have to be. So what would you do? Where would you take this deck? Do let me know in the comments, and check out all of my other Civ 6 themed Magic fan cards. They were made for me, no, for you, not by me for you, by me for everyone, let's just say that. And Loki the Gamer tells you goodbye and later.